I am not afraid. I was born to do this.
Joan of Arc, a brave saint.
Loyal to her country, loyal to God.
This is her story. Joan of Arc, story by Natalie Rivera,
Raeesah Hernandez,
and Sochi Solis. Joan of Arc was born in a little town called Dormy, France, on January 6 around the year 1412.
One day, when Joan was 13, she heard voices that she thought were the voices of Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret, the patron saints of her country, speaking for God. These voices led Joan to believe that God had chosen her to lead France in a long-running war with England, the 100 Years' War.
The 100 Years' War, a war that lasted 116 years because of a series of disputes between England and France. The main reasons for this war were disagreements over rights to land and the succession to the French throne. Therefore, England and France went to war.
In May 1428, Joan of Arc traveled from Dormy to Vaucouleurs. That was the nearest stronghold still loyal to Prince Charles VII. She asked the captain of garrison, Robert de Badgercourt, for permission to join Prince Charles and his cause. He didn't take her vision seriously and returned her home. Joan of Arc didn't give in and went back in January 1429.
Joan went at once to see the prince, but Charles was uncertain whether to receive her or not. His counselors gave him conflicting advice, but 2 days later he granted her an audience. Charles had hidden himself among his courtiers and had a servant disguised as him. When Joan entered, she made straight for him. She was able to recognize the king with the help of her voices.
She told him that she wished to go to battle against the English, and that she would have him crowned at Rheims. On Charles' order, she was immediately interrogated. This continued for 3 weeks. Finally, Joan said she would give proof of her mission.
On March 22nd, Joan wrote letters of defiance to the English. Also, in the report, the churchmen suggested that in view of the desperate situation of Orleans and the condition of its people, convinced Charles to let Joan lead the siege of Orleans.
She announced that she must go and attack the English. After she armed herself, she hurried out to the east of the city toward an English fort where a battle of which she had not been told of was taking place.
Joan's arrival stimulated the French army and was able to take the fort. On May 6, Joan and her forces advanced towards another English fort. The English evacuated immediately to a stronger fort, but Joan and La Hire attacked them there and took it by storm. On May 7th, Joan led the French at the siege of Orleans and was seriously wounded, but was treated and returned to the front line. This inspired her men, while the English were frightened. The French commanders maintained the attack until the English were defeated. On the next day, the English were seen retreating, but since it was Sunday, Joan refused any pursuit.
Joan of Arc was ready to fulfill the major part in her mission from God, the crowning of Prince Charles VII as King of France. On May 9th, Joan left Orleans and met Prince Charles at Tours. She begged him to go to Rheims to be crowned. Rheims is a city where all the French kings are anointed to be throned. Although Rheims was deep behind enemy lines at the time, Prince Charles was fearful and hesitant to go.
Shortly thereafter, the Rheims Cathedral Castle was surrendered to the French. This is the castle where all the coronation ceremonies were held at. On July 17, 1429, they arrived at Rheims and held the ceremony as soon as possible. This would be the height of her military achievements.
King Charles VII left Rheims on July 20th. Then, on August 2nd, he decided to retreat to the river Niort, abandoning any plan to attack Paris. Joan was opposed to Charles' decision. On August 5th, she wrote a letter to reassure the citizens of Rheims, saying that the Duke of Burgundy had made a fortnight's truce, after which it was hoped that he would yield Paris to the king. The truce was to last 15 days. Everywhere the people said Joan was now the idol of the French.
On August 28, a 4-month truce for all the territory north of the Seine was concluded with Burgundians.
On September 8th, King Charles VII attacked Paris with Joan leading the French army. After several attempts, Joan had to abandon the attack.
On September 22nd, they reached Gien, and Charles' army was disbanded. The captains went home, but Joan remained with the king and the royal entourage.
Also, on this day happened to be Virgin Mary's birthday, a religious holiday, which fighting was not allowed. This damaged Joan's public image.
On December 29th, 1429, Joan of Arc and her family were ennobled, meaning that her and her family were given a noble rank.
Early in 1430, the Duke of Burgundy began to threaten the towns of Brie and Compiègne. The citizens of Reims became alarmed, so Joan wrote a letter in March to assure the people of Reims of the king's concern and to promise that she would come to their defense. In late March, Joan left the king and set out to their aid, accompanied by her brother Pierre, her squire Jean de Laune, and with a small troop of men-at-arms.
Joan heard that John of Luxembourg, the captain of a Burgundian company, had laid siege on the city. After hearing the news, she quickly rushed to Compiègne and entered under the cover of darkness. On May 23rd, she led her forces to repel against the Burgundians twice, but she was eventually outflanked by the English reinforcements. Joan called for a retreat. Most of her men got away except Joan, Pierre, and Jean de Laune. They were captured and taken to Martigny. This marked the end of Joan's military career and the beginning of her captivity.
John was originally unwilling to hand Joan to the English, but he was eventually paid 10,000 livres to turn her over. King Charles VII, who was working towards a truce with the Duke of Burgundy and his uncle King Henry VI of England, made no attempt to save her. She was brought to Rouen to face trial.
When Joan of Arc learned that she was about to be turned over to the English, she threw herself off the prison tower but survived the suicide attempt.
Her trial and interrogations lasted for the first 4 months of the year 1431. On May 30th, she was charged for heresy and witchcraft, which were crimes against the Church of England. Upon her conviction, she was burned at stake. She died at the age of 19.
As time passed, France won the 100 Years' War. On May 16, 1920, she was canonized as a saint. She changed the church. She proved to them that even women have the ability to lead in war and the church was not always correct. She reunited France and reclaimed territories. She is the woman who shaped France.
Those towns that Joan took back would have never been liberated with France's political situation, and Charles VII would have not become the King of France.
All around in our world today, Joan of Arc has had a presence. From the beginning of the United States, she has inspired people to do more for liberty and freedom. Joan of Arc has been seen in every theater of war that America and the rest of the free world have participated in, from buying war bonds to giving blood for the wounded. She has had a direct connection to the women's rights movement. Many schools, churches, and buildings bear her name. Some of the most famous architectural structures have been touched by her, including one of the most visible within our land, Lady Liberty. Often, people do not notice that the statue stands on broken chains, representing the end of oppression and slavery. Joan of Arc has and will continue to be an iconic figure to inspire and show that one young woman can change and improve how we live.